I'd like to talk to you about several things, really.
Right.
But I'm dying to talk to you about the touring cars and the Sierras, because that's obviously my thing, and it got me racing, to be fair.
Yeah, okay. It's great to have to go back and look at some of those things that happened. I mean, I have an opinion about current touring cars. Yes, they're very good, but when we were running, and without wishing to go back to old times, but they had too much power, not enough grip, good racing.
Yeah.
And I think you have an element now whereby you've got not enough power, far too much grip, and therefore the racing probably isn't quite as good.
It's not actually, to be fair.
Yeah, and also, the development going into those RS 500s, every lap we did in that car then was £1,000. So we were running them very, very marginal on power, and so they were always looking inside the engine to make sure it wasn't detonating. We ran low compression but very high boost, so we were running 2.5, 2.6 bar, which is 3.5, 3.6 bar boost, massive boost. So very difficult to try and keep the turbo to spin, because that's when you had all the power, obviously.
Your cars came from Australia, though, didn't they?
Yeah, so I got asked by Shell. Shell were very good, they supported me. I had a phone call on a Wednesday, did I want to race at Bathurst at the weekend? So I said, well, yeah, of course I do. So anyway, so I got on a plane and I flew over there, drove for Dick Johnson, which was great. That was my first time there, and I think I did Bathurst either 5 times or 6 times. And then we got very friendly and all the rest of it. I then drove I was driving for Rouse, but the problem is driving for Andy, there was a strict protocol as to what I should do and what I shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And one of the things I shouldn't have done is part of the deal was I wasn't necessarily allowed to overtake, and I wasn't allowed to win unless he either broke down or he went off.
Yeah.
And I had to accept those conditions. But anyway, when I got to the Grand Prix, I thought, well, anybody's here, so I overtook him. Probably wasn't the best thing to do at the time. But interestingly enough, I then, later years, when I got picked to drive the Mondeo, the factory in Mondeo, in the World Championships to represent the UK, I then went back again and drove one of Rouse's cars again. So I drove quite a few of his cars, and he did build a very good car. And obviously we had that head-to-head, which was very real, actually. I mean, it wasn't playing; it was very, very real. Because I suppose we came along and sort of usurped him. Really, we were very much the underdog, as you know. We then got into quite difficult problems with the sponsor, who pulled out. Well, they had a contract, but. And so, every lap that we did was a lap that we might not have been able to do in the race. Yeah. So I'd go out and do qualifying, do 3 laps and put it on the stands, just to see if anybody went any faster. So, so it was an exciting year. But that car we used in 1990, we built in-house.
Sorry, it was 90.
So,
I said 92, didn't I? When did I get 92?
Yeah, so 90,
it was 90, yeah.
Yeah, 1990.
Oh,
so
the old hairpin, you were driving a sock, so you were out driving that car, and my brother will watch me. That's a bloody Cosworth, he's out driving it. What's he doing?
Yeah.
How could he? But you tried everything.
Yeah.
You tried everything. Our heart went out to you, because you deserved that win more than anybody. You really did.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing is that there was a huge financial commitment that went into that, into Trackstar at the time. And obviously Mike and I were very good friends. And he was very good on one side of the coin and I was very good on the other. So we complemented each other. Yeah. And we were told, you cannot go up against the factory teams and beat the factory teams. So we looked at it, we thought, well, can't see any reason why we shouldn't try to do that. Yeah. Obviously, the history of it, we managed to achieve it. So that was all very good, actually.
Yeah. Apart from this year, what would you say was the best car that you drove?
That's a very good question, actually. I mean, the Sierra, without doubt, was by far the fastest, most outrageous, brutish car. It's well documented at Bathurst that was doing 189 miles an hour down the Conrod Straight, which was fine, but you had to stop it at the end of it. In Japan, at Fuji, in qualifying trim, because we could run qualifiers then, in qualifying trim it was into the 190s.
Yeah.
At Fuji in qualifying.
So did you have a separate gurney flap on it and things like that you could take off and put on it?
No, you
just
weren't allowed to do that. Yeah, well, it was the RS 500 rear wing, which actually did work. It did actually give it downforce. When we went to the Sapphire in '91, the rear wing actually gave it upforce. It was there literally as make it look I suppose, relatively nice, sporty, but we put it in the wind tunnel and it was doing exactly the opposite. But the RS500 actually did work. So, no, they were stunningly quick. I mean, sometimes when we tested with the RS500, we used to test with the F3000 cars, and we used to go past them down the straight like they were standing still. I mean, they were that quick in a straight line. But then we had to try and stop them at the end of the straight, so they would come back fast.
It wasn't carbon brakes or anything like that.
No, still brakes. Big brakes, but still brakes.
Yeah, and they were AP brakes, weren't they? AP then?
I think they were AP at the time, yeah. But I mean, you know, and the tyre, we did a lot of work on tyre technology. When I bought Yokohama in, I said they were fantastic, and they really weren't. They really were not good. But I did a lot of evaluation on the tyres, development on the tyres, and I don't know why when I drive a car, I can tell specifically what's going on, and I can be very specific about what needs to be done. And Japan were very good on that because, as you know, I brought them into this country. And we developed them, and eventually the tyre did become very good, so that was quite fortunate. But I always wanted to do something slightly different, which is the same with Mountune, if you think about it. When I went to see David Mountain at Mountune, I could have gone elsewhere where they were all developed, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go somewhere different, and of course, you know the story with David. We worked very well together. We won the 2 championships back to back in '87 on the Cosworth, which no one had ever done before. I didn't mean to do that, and there's another story, because we went out in the first round of the Uniroyal, won that round, and the second round was 2 weeks later at Thruxton, but you couldn't test at Thruxton, so the Munro Championship started the week after, so we thought, we'll enter that championship and we'll just use it as a test session. But then I went and won that as well, so I'm now leading 2 championships. So that was quite a difficult season. After coming off back-to-back wins the season before when I was in MG, so I also won the MG Owners Club and the MG Car Club, which again had never been done. That was quite difficult, so I'd be qualifying somewhere and I'd have to get in a helicopter or a plane, go and qualify somewhere. Complete madness, really. And then of course when it went into Super Touring, that became quite difficult. When I was in Hong Kong, we were racing at Macau, so Stefan Johansson was in the sister car. Mike was there, but he wasn't driving. And I had 5 manufacturers ringing me up trying to drive for them. And my lawyer, Ford had been very good, so I stayed with Ford, and 9 months later they pulled out. So that left me to only go to Peugeot, which was run by somebody that should not. Size sort of shell for that, really, was it? The guy that ran it shouldn't have been running anything. I mean, it was terrible. So we eventually got that car going fairly quickly. And again, I got selected to represent England at Monza. Went to Monza in that car, and I'd said to Peugeot, "Why don't you just pick up the phone and get one of the French cars, because they're running at the front in Europe." No, we don't want to do that. We want to build our own car. So can't even run a car, let alone build a car. Anyway, they wouldn't do it, and I had the option, because my contract was for the UK only. I had the option to use any car I wanted to, subject to being. But I went to see the directors of Peugeot. And I said, "Look, I'm happy to use the car, but as long as you give me carte blanche over what I do with the setup." And they said, "Yeah, well, that's fine. That's fantastic. You use the car." So I went to Monza, having never been there before. We did 3 or 4 laps, and I don't know, we were second and a half off or whatever. And I came in and I said, "Right, what I want to do is I want to drop the car down half an inch." And they looked at me as if I was mad. And they said, "Well, we can't." I said, "Well, why not?" He said, "Well, the tyres might rub the wings." I said, "So we stand to lose maybe some paint off the wing and maybe lose a set of tyres. Drop the car down." So we did, and they had to change all the toes. And I think I qualified second or third in the world there, in a car that was a midfield car in the UK, but of course the person running it, they didn't want to listen. I mean, it's just so with a relatively amount of experience as to how to run cars. And racing is very strange, isn't it?
It's so fickle, and it's awful.
I mean, without wishing to sound big-headed, I've never got in a car not being able to make a car faster. So the setup of a car is obviously very important. And the setups, you have guidelines with it. It's like a textbook setup. But most of my setups were quite different. If it was fast, the clock doesn't lie, does it?
Stop the clock tells you everything you need to know. You don't need a data log in, as far as I'm concerned. That stopwatch tells you if you're doing quick enough. I'm old school, sorry. I could never get into the data logging much. I'm interested in it now, but it's just
Well, I mean, if you look at the team we're running with now, they've got 3 full-time data loggers here now, and you know they do learn a lot from it. You can see, you can compare, and all the rest of it, and the guys have to listen. And you know, 10th, for example, Bradley in qualifying would have put him up to 5th place on the grid. 1/10 of a second, so it's very tight. And you've had guys running in the JCW, been here for quite a long time. So they've got an awful lot of experience. He's learning. His learning curve is vertical.
So that's the beauty of this team, is that there's so much knowledge, and they know everything. That if you were coming into it, you'd want to learn yourself.
No team knows everything.
No.
And you should always be open to other suggestions or ideas. And the moment teams aren't open to that, then that's a problem. That becomes a problem. But at the moment, this team is open to that, which is good.
I think it's wonderful.
But you need the expertise there.
So you've actually had a go in the Mini or not?
No, I haven't. No, I mean, I wanted to get into the car last year, not because I wanted to get into it, because I thought that I could help with the chassis, but Bradley needed seat time. So whenever I got the chance to potentially get into it, I thought it was more important for him to be.
Can you have private test days in them or not? Or
you can do that, you can.
So do you think you will do or not?
I think now we've got quite a good setup on the car. I mean, what I would like to do, which would be really fun, is to get into the current touring cars, as long as it's a front-running car. Because my eye is still good. I train every day. I train like I'm still. I mean, Sarah will say, "Well, you're not in a racing car now, and you still train as if you are." Well, yeah, because I've always trained, and you have to be fit. If you're physically fit, you're mentally fit. I'm not the youngest person in the world. I have to tell lies about my age now.
Well, you're only 42 anyway.
That's right,
Sorry, 43. Sorry, I got the date right. It was last week, wasn't it, your birthday?
That's right. You're still being kind, that's right.
Well, we had a thing at school, it's just with a simple phone app, reaction times, and all the young lads at work were going, you know. And I was beating them with reaction times. But that's purely through motor racing. It isn't anything else. It isn't a natural thing. It's because it's years and years of that.
It's really interesting. A few years ago, we did a fitness comparison test between then a Division 1 footballer, like a Premiership footballer, a guy called Robert Rosario, and a race driver, which happened to be me. And we did 2 days testing. And it was quite interesting with the running. I could run as fast as he could, but for like 10% of the time. And then he would obviously be faster and all the rest of it. So most of it, they checked all the blood flow and the aorta valve and all that sort of stuff. But the stress test was the most interesting thing. We had 2 doctors on hand all the time. And when we did a stress test, unstressed reaction time stress test, our reaction times were basically fairly similar. And maybe I was a bit faster slightly, but negligibly. Under stress, heavy stress, my reaction times went through the roof and his declined. So it went the opposite way, and the doctors couldn't work this out. And the way they sorted out in the end, well, they determined that it happened, is that if you're kicking a ball and you're running down the field, you kick the ball, it goes out, who cares? It doesn't make any difference, does it? Because they give you the ball back or another one, you throw it back in and off you go. If you're in a race car and you go into a corner and it goes slightly wrong, your heart rate goes up, doesn't it? Because you think, whoa, and you save the car. And by the time you sort it all out, if you're on to the next corner and the problem happens, your heart rate goes up. By the time you got to the 3rd or 4th corner, your heart rate's round here. So you're into cardiac arrest, potentially.
We did
so it's the brain that controls
everything.
All of that stuff.
That's right.
So
I
it's
never
very
thought of it
interesting.
like that. Because we did a thing at Jim Russell where we did a race and we had heart monitors strapped to us. And it was like I think the heart rate on the start was 140 beats per minute or something stupid like that. I can't remember. And there was a doctor who's going, they should be in casualty. They shouldn't be. But it was only literally for the first first lap, and then it went back down to your 70s. You know, obviously you're going to be fitter than that, but there's the stress there, so it was. 70s and 80s. But at the beginning, most doctors would say, right, you shouldn't, you're critical, you shouldn't be doing this.
I mean, 140 would be all right, but I mean, if you speak to some heart people, they'll say you can go over 200. But mostly if you're relatively fit, even now I'll be running 165 probably, which is probably more than, in theory, for my average age should be lower, but if you're fit enough, I mean the heart's just a muscle, isn't it? So and you need the heart to pump the blood, to pump the oxygen, to pump so your brain works properly. I'm not sure whether my brain ever worked properly actually, but that's another story.
Sometimes it's not a bad one. So plans for Bradley, obviously touring cars. I personally think he's going to get there because he's got the right attitude. He's working hard. You brought him up very well. He doesn't think he's owned anything, and he does put the hours in. And I'm mighty impressed with him actually.
in motorsport there has to be a plan.
Yeah.
And you've got to be fast to start with. You've got to be committed. I try to keep them out of it because it's a very, very difficult industry, and the industry is now changed. And we could talk about that subject for a long time. But anyway, the more I tried to stop it, the more he wanted to do it. So one thing you can't buy is desire. You can't buy desire. So there are probably a certain amount of people sitting in race cars here today that are there because mum and dad might want them to be there, or maybe they think they want to be a race driver. But as you pointed out, you have to do all the other stuff behind it. So what you see on the track is probably 5% of what goes on behind all of that. One, to make it happen, financial. 2, you've got to become a businessman now because the model has changed. 3, you've got to be physically fit. And 4, you've got to be fast on the track. And then you've got to learn all your racecraft and all these other things. And so that's why Bradley's learning curve is vertical. But you've seen the difference between what's happening this year and what's happened last year.
I mean,
run with the quick guys.
The car is just, to me, it just seems like you never know what it's going to do.
No, it's very short wheelbase. They're running 285 horsepower. I mean, at Brands Hatch here, they're as quick as some of the back end touring cars.
I mean, I watched a lot of the start. They're as quick as the touring cars nearly off the start, going in the first corner.
It's interesting. Bobby Thompson was in these JCWs for a few races last year.
That's right, and
I know Bobby reasonably well, and I was talking to him, and he was saying, look, these are so much more difficult to drive than a touring car. Well, I'm not surprised because you've got so much tyre on a touring car. I think they're supposed to be running about 400 horsepower. And as I said to you right at the beginning of the conversation, to have good racing, you've got to have too much power, not enough grip, good racing. Because then you're down to the driver. So, I think what they should do is reduce the size of the tyres. They'll all be whining. But you see what would happen then. You'd have fantastic racing. They don't have to be looking after their tyres. All those things that we had to do in the past. Technology's gone on with tyre development and all the rest of it. So it's quite interesting.
I think it's brilliant. Well, thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
I still haven't come down yet, and it'll probably be on the way home that I'll actually... Bugger, I just spoke to Rob Gravett. I should have asked him this. I should have done that.
I think we've done pretty good here, actually.
It's been brilliant. Thank you very much. I much appreciate it.
Good to meet you.
Thank you. Star. Thank you.